Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our Microsoft/Office 365 webinar today. We will be using the term Microsoft 365 mostly because Microsoft changed it from Office 365 to Microsoft 365. So just trying to use the latest term, but just think of Office 365 as we go through this today. Today, we're going to be talking about breaches. Breaches in Office 365 is the #1 incident response call that we get into our business today, whether it's an email account that's been broken into, an administrator account that's been broken into, fraudulent emails being sent, rules being built, or just overall password theft. So we think Office 365 is a terrific platform. However, it's only terrific if it's got some proper things in place. There's a ton of things that we notice when we're doing assessments and in the incident response that could easily be corrected to mitigate or even eliminate a lot of these risks. So we're going to cover all those today. And so we're fortunate to have Madison Slater on the call today. Many of you may have already talked with Madison or attended one of her webinars, but she is an expert in cybersecurity, in writing cybersecurity executive reports, doing assessments, leading incident responses. If it has to do with cyber and breaking into businesses and stealing money, Madison knows about it. But just a few details before we get started today. All lines are muted, so please enter in your chat messages into the screen, into your panel. If you don't have that information, you probably just have to turn on the view in order to see the chat. Any questions you send today, you'll feel free to send it to us individually or to the group. We will answer those questions at the end of the webinar or when we see fit. We are going to record this webinar today. It's being recorded for those who got busy, pulled away from their desks. If anyone works in IT, you know, sometimes it's kind of tough to hit a meeting. There's always some mouse emergency or something else that pops up in the interim. So, and then all questions, again, will be answered at the end. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump right into it and get started. Madison, are you there?
I am here. Good morning, everybody. This is Madison Slater. Thank you again for joining us today. We like John said, we focus a lot on Microsoft 365 around here. And he said it, I want to repeat it. We like Office 365, Microsoft 365. We use it ourselves. A lot of our clients use it. However, I found this statistic and I found this very sobering. 85% of organizations using Microsoft 365 have experienced an email data breach. So that means that, let's just say all of you attending right now have 365, 85% of you, it is very likely, have experienced some sort of email data breach on your environment. That is a terrifying statistic. Now, that statistic comes from a lot of different variables, and we're going to talk about ways today for you to try and be in that little blue sliver where you're not one of the ones getting hit. Like John also mentioned, Microsoft 365 breaches are our #1 incident response call here at JSCM Group. We get these calls on a very, very regular basis. You know, we sort of plan around here that the week of July 4th is going to be one of our slower catch-up weeks. And this year we had multiple calls about 365 breaches. Now, these calls have definitely increased because of the pandemic, more people working from home. Just email attacks in general have increased throughout that time. Microsoft 365 is a huge target because of the information that is out there, the ability to get into it. There's a lot of different pieces that go into this of making it one of the highest attacked areas that we're getting calls about. Now, there are a lot of different areas that we're seeing surrounding breaches. I try to compile a list of things when we're talking about these incident response calls, different topics that we're seeing. One of the biggest one is compromised or stolen passwords. When we're talking about accounts getting hacked into, it's very possible that it is getting compromised because that person's password was somehow stolen, whether that was through another phishing attack, whether that was your users using reused passwords, that the password they're using for their email was also the password they used for their Runtastic account that got compromised. Those things are causing these accounts to be broken into. Now, directly correlated to that, on these accounts, when that password is stolen, is a lack of MFA. Not having that second form of approval there is really hindering your ability to secure that network. We're also seeing, when we get one of these calls, suspicious logins from around the world. Now, I will not say that every single attack against your 365 is going to come from another country. There are plenty of threats that come from here in the United States. However, what you will see in a lot of these situations are suspicious logins from a different country at weird hours of the day. You know, a login from Japan at 3 in the morning. Well, that most likely was not actually your user. We're also seeing issues with emails getting forwarded to external mailboxes. So what happens in this situation is someone gets access into the system and they're forwarding that email out of that mailbox. Now, the reason that this is such a big issue is that when they do this, they can set it so that a copy of that email is still in that user's inbox. So the user actually sees nothing different. But when that email gets forwarded out to this external source, that attacker is retaining information about the organization. Maybe the user's password has gotten changed. They can't log back into the mailbox, but we're not monitoring that that email is still being forwarded out. So they, again, are still retaining that access and that level of information into the network. This is a big one that we see, and it's one of the things we're going to talk about here a little bit later, things that you can protect yourselves against by making some changes inside of your system. Now, we're also seeing a lot of outbound spam when this happens. So in a couple of the calls we've gotten recently, what happened was that the user's mailbox got compromised, and then there was a flood of 1,000, 2,000 messages, something like that, getting sent out all at once. That's usually more indicative of a more automated attack that's happening, some sort of bot or something that's inside of it that's just spewing out a bunch of email. A lot of times, sorry, my Siri decided she wanted to talk. Sometimes that is indicative of they got into the mailbox, they pulled the user's contact list, they're just sending out to absolutely everyone that they can. A lot of these situations, we have seen them creating some sort of invoice or something that looks legitimate to the organization that they have breached, trying to extend that connection out into unsuspecting third parties, getting the person to click on a link, getting them to try and direct to a URL that they assume is safe. And then another one is compromised administrator accounts, and we're definitely going to talk about this one in depth. So compromised administrator accounts can be exceptionally detrimental to the security of your 365 because admins can, of course, do everything inside of the system. So if that account gets compromised, then we're running into issues where they can get in, they can make changes to other mailboxes, things like that. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about real quick about all of these issues is when we've gotten some of these calls where there was suspicious activity, a lot of times what we're hearing is, well, we're being spoofed. Our mail is being spoofed. They are somehow making it seem like it's coming from us, but it's not. There's often an idea, I think a psychological aspect of this, well, it can't be me. Somehow they have made it look like it's me. The issue with Office 365 compromises, so we're talking about stolen passwords, them getting in because of no MFA. That mail is getting sent from your legitimate 365. So things like anti-spoofing are not going to pick up on that because if you've done your due diligence, if you've got your SPF records in place, if you've done your DKIM and your Dmarc, all of that stuff is set. So it's coming from a real mailbox. So these issues, these compromised accounts are not getting caught by spam unless it's just catching on a massive amount being sent because it's coming from a legitimate source. The other issue here, and one of the big things that we're seeing, is internal compromise. So if you have an email security system, if you have some sort of email solution that's doing anti-spam, that's concerned about what's leaving your mail and what's coming in. It does not typically monitor inter-office communication. So if you are emailing a coworker or you are emailing a superior, that email is not getting scanned by your spam filter because it's all internal. And attackers are relying on a lot of these different ways that email is being handled as ways to further compromise that. Even if they sent an openly suspicious email from one of your compromised mailboxes to someone else in the environment, well, then your spam filter is not picking up on it because it's not actually picking up, it's not actually scanning those messages going through. So all of these issues are compounded by the just general process of the way email flows. And it's why we are taking such a hard stance on 365. We are never going to tell someone to get rid of the solution unless Microsoft just absolutely takes a hard left turn. There are ways inside of 365 that you can protect yourself against all of these things, every single one of these. But you have to do the work to put that in there. There's often a concept that it's Office 365, so it's secure. We talk about this in basically every area of security that we can. It's only as secure as you make it. So we're going to talk about different ways that you can go in and lock some of this stuff down. All right, John wants to talk a little bit about impersonation and extortion. This is something he's been personally seeing a lot and something we've been seeing a lot on our end as well.
Yep, and if you guys could just flip the presentation over to me, terrific. Actually, before you do that, hang on a second. Before you do that, can you go back? Sorry. I did want to show the email real quick. This is an example of an email, maybe. Madison, can you bring that back up?
Yep, sorry, working on it.
Well, we can come back to that. So we'll go ahead and just move on. And so, okay, so here's an example of a screen. So a lot of times you get targeted phishing attacks that go to your users. And the purpose of the phishing attack is to get them to authenticate into Office 365 or what appears to be Office 365. So the users receive a link in an email that appears to be from Microsoft. And that email shows up under it shows up under the user's inbox, but it's actually under a fraudulent email domain, but the users don't see that because certain anti-phishing protections aren't enabled inside the 365 platform. So the users receive a login window that looks similar to this. This login window is prompting them to log into 365, which all looks legit. But if you notice, we can see this, but if you notice the login domain is not correct, it is in fact a fraudulent domain that's redirecting them. So, but the user enters in their email address and password and they sign in, they receive some type of fraudulent confirmation message, thank you for verifying, or it just simply redirects them to a company portal and life goes on. At that point, they have pulled those configurations, or I'm sorry, pulled those passwords down, and now those passwords are available for the user to then, for the attacker to fraudulently log into the 365 account. And then they go in there and they create those rules. Madison was talking about the rules for sending out spam messages from your account, using it to navigate around and do other things inside the 365 environment. Here's the key police car outside my window. Here's the key to properly understanding how to protect your users. It is the job of everybody in cybersecurity and in IT to help the users protect themselves. But at the end of the day, we are dealing with a psychological problem, meaning that it is psychology that causes people to click on links and to enter in their passwords fraudulently, more so than a technical problem or technical problem with the system. Technical people are often blamed for the issues that happen. But really, when you have people working around the clock to try to trick your users into clicking and doing on something, they're very good at what they do, and it's very possible to fall for it. Our company does phishing testing and other things for organizations, and I can tell you it's not a technical problem, because if we were to test a technical business, we can get up to 82% of the technical people to fall for a phishing attack. In fact, we recently conducted an internal test on our organization in order to see how people would react. And there's the occasional user that clicks on something. There's always that desire in order to help IT out, help payroll out, help somebody else out. So these attacks are constantly coming into your inboxes. And if a user gives out a username and password to their 365, they're going to be able to send email out as your organization, write rules. And in a recent breach that we had, the person that was tricked was the IT admin. So that person's account got compromised. They logged in and they did a whole bunch of damage as a result of that. Don't let that happen to you. So we can do a number of things inside of 365 for you, or you can do it yourself by following a security score that Madison will talk about in a little bit to help lock that down. Most of the issues with misconfigurations of 365 that lead to these breaches are preventable with the basic default settings. There's a couple of things that you need in addition to that, which is the MFA piece that we can help with as well. But without MFA, you're just reliant on that username and password. Very critical that you have a form of protection outside of just the username and password. Passwords are simply not secure, and as we know, users will fall for those tricks. Here's another thing that we see is what's called impersonation attacks. So go back to a screen here, and I can show you. We run a program here called Sentinel, and this program monitors our 365 environment. So here's a list of just a few emails we've received in the past week or so that were targeting Madison, myself, someone here named Jory, and Adam. And so these are emails that we received. They were basically sent to appear as if they were coming from our organization and heading to the person inside. And as you can see, these emails were flagged for extortion. So if I were to go in there and I were to read this message, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to see, oh, I'm sorry to inform you that your device was compromised. Let me explain. And the attacker goes through a whole list of things, threatening, telling he's going to release all this information to my family. He's been on my system for months. He knows all about it. And he needs $1,650. Otherwise, he's going to tell somebody about everything that I've done. And I've got 2 days to pay that. Now, this is an obvious, very poor extortion attempt that happens. But here's where the psychological component comes into. What if there was one of the users on my network that may have done something a little bit wrong on the computer, received this message, and then went ahead and fell for that attack? I had a call, it's probably been about a year and a half ago, that somebody had called up saying that, hey, they needed some assistance because one of their employees was freaking out. They received an extortion email, and he was really worried that if he didn't pay, he was going to lose his marriage. And I don't mean to laugh, but it was funny that he believed that that was actually kind of possible. We talked him off the ledge, and we explained to them that this is simply an extortion. Simply nothing will happen. Something's happening outside. I don't know how many police cars are going to go past my office here. So there we go. I think they're done now. These systems, though, back to the point, these systems can monitor your inbox for phishing, for extortion, for any type of fraud attempts, fraudulent banking information, absolutely anything that you may need to protect your organization from stuff like this. Is it 100%? No, but it does help. Here's something else I want to show you is that there's something called Dmarc Reporting, and I won't really cover that right there. But what Dmarc Reporting does is it monitors email being sent in the world and to see where it's coming from and if it's approved, if it's not approved. So, for example, here is one of our domains that we use to send out some mailers and stuff. And these mailers, in our case, are being sent from our mail application, which is called Mailchimp. A lot of people use this. It's a widely used email platform. So we're saying that that one is okay, and we're saying that that's an approved sender. However, we have other senders like this domain I've never heard of, or this domain I've never heard of, or this domain I've never heard of. All of these are known to be sending out email as us, even though we've not approved it. So putting in this simple monitor, this reporting tool, allows us to see, hey, what's going on here? And I can go in and simply investigate, and I can see that these domains are sending out these emails. And I can even break it down by IP address. And then if I say, hey, these are not mine, I don't know anything about this, I can mark them as not approved, which means other mail systems will not accept mail from that. So let's just say somebody did break into my 365 email system. They can then go in and start sending out mail. Those, in that situation, they may be approved. However, if they were sending it from other domains, it won't be approved. So to kind of just show you all these different, there's all these different tools out there to protect you against these things, but nothing is 100%. So the number one thing you need to do, and I'll pass it back to Madison so she can show you some other, or talk about some other things, is you need to build in the defenses at the 365 layer. That's where it comes down to. That's what matters most. And that's where you need to protect yourself, because you can't control what other people pretend you're doing. You have to control what they're able to do on your system. So Madison, you want to take it back over?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, John. Yeah, like you said, I mean, we get these, we get those emails all the time, pretending like it's us, as I'm sure a lot of you do as well. It's not a fun situation to get one of those. So, and it does send you into a little bit of a panic. So, you know, being aware that those are out there, being aware that that's something that could happen. So let's talk about some stuff inside of 365 that you can do. So the number one thing, the absolute number one thing that you need to do for your 365 is you need to have MFA turned on across the board. Now, when I say across the board, what I mean here is MFA on your user accounts, MFA on your admin accounts, anything that could be used to log into your Office 365, into your Microsoft 365, should have MFA. I will highlight the fact that at the very least, before the end of today, any of your admin accounts specifically should have MFA on them. Now, to piggyback off of that, you need to separate your admin accounts. One of the things that we see a lot is that the IT person or whoever's managing Microsoft 365, their regular email account is also set with global admin permissions, and they just have some generic password on it. If your email account is currently an admin in 365, you need to separate that out. So one of the things that we do, if any of you are familiar with the internal workings of the 365 portal, you know that you have an on Microsoft domain. It is not tied to your actual email domain. So what you should do in the scenario, if your email account is currently your admin, go into your Office 365, set up a new global admin using the on Microsoft domain. That way you can turn on MFA for that if you are not yet ready to roll it out for your regular user accounts. And then you need to go into your email and restrict your permissions. We have had multiple calls where 365 was compromised through the admin side of things, and once they're in the admin side, it is really hard to unwind anything that they can do in there. It's hard to see some of the stuff that they can do. So again, before the end of the day, separate out your admin account, at least turn on MFA there, but you really, really, really need to be turning on MFA for every single email user that you have. The other thing, don't rely on the default rules. So there are certain rules inside of 365, anti-spam and things like that, that have a base configuration, but for the most part, they're really simple. For example, one of the settings in anti-spam, you can turn on that throttling. So if someone is compromised and they're sending out 1,000 messages at a time, you can actually stop that at that level. But you have to make sure that you go in and set that. If you don't, then there's not really going to be anything that you can do to help protect yourself in that scenario. If you are not using the web portal, if you're not using OWA, disable it. If you are only using it for some users but not all, turn it off for the people that aren't using it. That is how they are getting in. They are hitting that portal first. Sure, they can configure it in Outlook, but it's so much easier to just go to portal.office.com and log in there. So if you have a user account that, again, is not using OWA, click on their account, and in the settings of their account, you can disable that. To piggyback off of what John was saying, use some sort of external or third-party email protection service. Now, yes, 365 has some built-in security when it comes to anti-spam and anti-phishing. It cannot keep up. It just can't. So use some sort of external service. If you need recommendations on that, we have several that we can point you to. We have one that we've developed here called ClosePort. We know it works with 365, but there's plenty of them out there. Use some sort of third-party email protection service. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket. I love 365. I don't want to have a hosted internal Exchange server. However, I don't want to rely on their spam filtering either. So use some sort of third-party service and make sure that you are forcing your traffic in and out of that service. So you can set rules inside of 365 that directly relay traffic in and out of that email service. Make it so they have to go through that to get email in or out of you. And thank you. I just saw a comment from someone. Piggybacking off of the OWA, when you turn that off, you will also see the options to turn off Imap and POP3 and other protocols that you may not be using. If you're not using it, turn it off. You don't need it if it's not actually being utilized. And then finally, there's a feature called Microsoft Secure Score that you can use inside of your 365 portal that gives you a scoring mechanism of how you're faring. And what's great about the Secure Score is that it gives you recommendations to get yourself to be more secure. The first thing that it's going to flag you on is if you don't have MFA on your account. It's also going to flag you on if you have too many global admins or if those global admins don't have MFA. But that secure score can be really useful. Now, for any of you that are that manage your 365, you know this as well as I do. Microsoft likes to move things around inside of their portal. So what we like to do, or what I do when I'm looking for the secure score, is once I'm logged into my 365 portal, if you're having trouble finding it, just go to your search engine, search for Microsoft Secure Score. You'll get a link to it. You're already logged into your portal, so you'll be able to find it that way as well. It is available inside of the admin portal, but again, Microsoft's favorite pastime is to move stuff around inside of that. For any of these pieces, if you are not sure how to do it, this is why we are putting on these kinds of webinars. We want to share this information. We want to help you guys get yourselves protected. Trust me, I don't like knowing that pretty much every incident response call I get is about 365. I want that to be a different scenario. We want to empower you all to make yourselves more protected. If you tackle today at least separating out your admin accounts and putting MFA on that in and of itself is a huge deal. But again, that MFA across the board is definitely going to be something that you want to consider very heavily and get implemented sooner rather than later. All right. So now we'll, yeah, go ahead, John.
I would say we have one question here. So there's someone is using a third-party filter with Sophos, and they're filtering the inbound, but they're not filtering the outbound. So how strongly do you suggest we use a third party for outbound as well? And I know you would love that question because of what you've seen recently. So
Yes. So the situations that we have seen, I'll use a very specific example. We had an account that was compromised. That account was doing one of the automated massive outbound spam sends. They sent out about 1,000 messages over the course of about 10 minutes. Microsoft didn't catch it. However, had their outbound email been filtered through their spam solution, it would have caught that. The reason that you need to filter your outbound email through your spam solution is not just for things like that, but think of the longer term effects of that. If you have an account that is sending massive amounts of spam out and you're not stopping it, it's only a matter of time before your domain gets blocked by Spamhaus or whatever other services out there that is looking for that kind of stuff, which means that everyone else in your domain can't send an email because one account was compromised. Filter that through your email protection. Also, if your email protection offers you things like encryption, that is vital. If it's got any type of data loss prevention, you need to make sure that you are utilizing that as well, because that's going to give you a lot of added protection also. For the question, it appears we're using Barracuda rather than Exchange Online protection. So we actually, we utilize here a couple of different layers. Again, what I said earlier, I don't like putting all of my eggs in one basket. I want Microsoft to be the host. Microsoft is good at creating the email system. I don't necessarily believe that they have the best tool set for protecting me against the stuff that is out there. Things for me that are big, like I just said, the encryption, that's going to be a big issue that we don't necessarily have all the full capabilities that we want with 365, but I want there to be another piece of it that is telling my email what's good and what's not. 365 is good at routing the mail. I want another thing focused purely on security for my email that's protecting that as it's coming in and out of my network.
And incidentally, so by using third parties for MFA and for filtering, your cost per user will drop considerably, because to get the same level of protection with Microsoft, you typically need an an E3 license, E5 license. And so it's much cheaper to use a third party and you get better protection. It's just that building those layers of checks and balances. It's like, the example I always use is if I ask my kid to watch the cookie jar, right? So that's not exactly the most ideal scenario for a parent. Same thing goes with your email. You don't want the everything in one basket, and where that could be compromised. So the number one takeaway that we want you to have coming out of this, if it's not on your roadmap today, it needs to be. You need to enable MFA for every user. I can't sit here today and promise you that moving to MFA is completely smooth sailing, no rough seas, it's all good. I can't say that, because there's always going to be a thing here or there that trips us up. But the organization needs a commitment to security, and they need to go through that process to MFA. There's ways to ease the transition into it, but you need to be moving in that direction. It is the simplest, cheapest thing you can do to protect the business. The second thing is separating those MFA accounts, those admin accounts from the email accounts. You use an on Microsoft account for the admin. You don't use your users. Even if you are the IT administrator, just have a second account. It is necessary, because if they compromise one password, it can compromise both. But there's never a reason to not have MFA turned on the admin accounts. Always, always, always get that turned on. But it needs to be on for every user. Attacks can come from anywhere. It can be on any user, and although certain groups like accounting are more targeted, focusing on those users that are higher grade, higher targets is so important. But you need MFA in every single user all the time. Madison, would you like to wrap up?
Yes, Absolutely. Thank you all again for attending this. For any of you that might not have attended a JSCM group webinar before, our primary focus when it comes to security is sharing any bit of knowledge that we have. 365, again, I mean, we're preaching about it because this is such a huge issue that we are seeing. If you have any additional questions, if you would like any assistance with getting your environment locked down, if you have questions about third-party filtering, MFA, please reach out to us. We definitely want to reduce the number of incident response calls we're getting. We want to help you sleep easy at night knowing that your 365 is as protected as it can be. Thank you all again for your time. We really appreciate you joining, and we hope you have a great rest of your week.